Hi, Genevieve Jacobs from Region Media. Chief Police Officer Neil Gaughan's with me for the next in our Canberra 2030 series. Some region conversations about how we shape the city for the next decade, and in your case, how we view the role of police and your task in serving the Canberra community. Welcome, Neil. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Genevieve. Thanks for the invite.
Look, let's start by getting some shape around this. And I wanted to begin with criminal trends that are currently concerning you, looking into the future, the kinds of things that you're focusing on as we develop the next 5 to 10 years. What are you seeing?
So look, recidivist offenders obviously a bit of a focus for us, as is unfortunately what we're seeing on our roads. So we're focusing a lot on targeting bad behaviour with driving. But what we're leading that to is stolen motor vehicles, breaking into houses, etc. We're also concerned about domestic and family violence. We're seeing, unfortunately, increased rates of that across the country. And obviously our concern is working with our other agencies around mental health issues, which take up a lot of police time.
It's true to say, isn't it, that there's a relatively small cohort of people who are responsible for the significant majority of Canberra's crime?
Absolutely. It's, my guys estimate it's probably between 100 and 120 who are doing close to 75% of the crime. And what we've found through the recent Operation Toric is we've arrested 90 of those people, and we've seen a significant reduction in crime across the territory as a result of that. So, we will continue Toric for the foreseeable future.
What does that say to you about policing in the ACT, about the patterns of criminal behaviour in the ACT? We've had this conversation before. There are people whose grandparents were the same criminal cohort. Yeah, look,
I've been policing the territory since I was 19, and I'm a little bit older than that now. So almost 40 years I've been a police officer in Canberra. So I understand the unique situation we find ourselves in here. I think what we need to do is we need to look at these people before they actually even get into the criminal justice system. That needs to be the focus. And that's why the minimum age of criminal responsibility is a really good conversation to have. The support services need to be for those people when they're sort of 8, 9, 10, so that we're actually breaking that cycle of recidivism. Because what we find, unfortunately, is once people get into our prison system here in the territory, the likelihood of recidivism is quite high. So what I'm saying there is education is really important, housing, health, clothing on people's back, making sure they're fed, all those sort of things that you and I probably take for normal, some of these people struggle with. So unless we break that and actually give people direction in life, I think unfortunately we're going to see that cycle continue.
ACT Police certainly have a strong focus on recidivism, and it goes deeper than simply catching repeat crims. But I'm wondering if there are greater issues at play in the justice system as a whole. If we look at things like that rate of repeat offending, the community perceives, and I say perceives quite deliberately, that sentencing can sometimes be quite light. Yeah. We know there have been issues at the jail around the lack of rehabilitation and education programs. Is it fair to say that in 2022, and as we look towards the future, that some elements of the ACT justice system may be in danger of failing?
I don't know about failing, but I think we need to sort of look at exactly the entirety of the system and see where we can actually make improvements. Now, I don't comment on sentencing. I think sentencing is a matter for the judiciary. I do comment on bail because it's a public safety issue. That's why I comment on bail. It's really important differentiation. But I think what we need to do is see, when early intervention is where we need to put our focus on. The issue is once they've been in that prison, we're seeing it through the data, they unfortunately go back in. So we've got to intervene before they come into the criminal justice system. In a perfect world, we don't have police officers. We're never going to get there. But what we need to do is invest at the right time.
There's certainly some strong political narrative around this at the moment. We're seeing a lot of traction in the community around road deaths in particular.
Yes.
Is it a concern that that kind of politicisation, the strength of community emotion, begins to overwhelm evidence-based decision-making?
Well, I think the evidence is, unfortunately, we've seen a significant increase in the number. We're 17 this year already, and we're still 2.5 months to go in the calendar year. We haven't seen that number since 2010. So, it is an alarming number. So we actually do need to do something about it. And we're working with other agencies and directorates across the ACT government to do that. So whilst there has been some, a lot of political conversations about it and a lot of emotion, the fact is we've got to do something about it. Most of these accidents being caused by human error or people actually just being stupid. We need to get on top of that. But as far as, what we can do to assist with that, this is a whole of community issue. It's not just an issue for law enforcement. It's an issue for parents. Parents need to take some ownership with their kids as they're growing up. And we need to work out better processes to ensure we don't see this sort of behaviour.
We're also seeing a significant momentum towards raising the age of criminal responsibility. That's not only here in the ACT, that's a national movement.
Absolutely.
I know you have some doubts about that. And I'm really keen to explore why that is, given that many of the people we're talking about would belong to that cohort of particularly vulnerable kids coming out of disadvantaged backgrounds, perhaps with intergenerational connections with the justice system. Are we moving in the right direction when we say 12, then 14, this staged approach?
Well, certainly a staged approach is certainly something we're very, very strong on, because I think we've got to make sure we've got the system right, the basic system right for the 10 and 11-year-olds before we move to the next group. The 13-year-olds are a little bit more problematic. They're actually involved in some pretty serious crime. But again, it's making sure those support services are in place. If we go into this without additional resources being added to people like CYPS, having a safe place where we can actually put these kids in to ensure they actually don't become part of the criminal justice system, it's going to fail. And, I've said this plenty of times, over the last 12 months or so, we can be leaders without being reckless. So we've got to make sure we get those things in place, because the whole of Australia is watching what we're doing. And if we get it wrong or it fails, this conversation's done.
Well, as always in the ACT,
Correct.
We are the petri dish.
And being progressive is great, and I think I applaud the political leadership for this initiative, but they've got to make sure we get those things in place, the structures around it, to ensure that we actually have success. When
you say 13-year-olds committing fairly serious crimes, obviously we're very careful not to identify anyone in any particular way, but your point is that there are 13-year-olds who are essentially primary school kids, and there are 13-year-olds who are essentially committing adult crimes.
13-year-olds are in high school, a lot of them. So, the fact is they're using knives to commit armed robberies. They're, hitting people over the head with bottles when they steal their cars. So we are seeing that. I think if we can do a trial, well, not trial, but an implementation of the 10 and 11-year-old cadre for a period of time, in 2 years' time, those kids are 12 and 13. So we've actually washed through the system, the group that we potentially think is going to be a problem in 2 years' time. So let's be cautious.
The other issue that I know is raising considerable concern among police is the debate we're also having about decriminalising more drugs and about, again, being a progressive jurisdiction in that sense. You've just talked about the need to divert and to educate. It's conceivable that in 5 to 10 years' time we could have some of the most permissive, for want of a better word, drug laws in the country. Do you have concerns about that?
I think it'll happen much quicker than that. I think it'll happen very quickly. I think, again, I agree that addiction is not a law enforcement issue. Addiction is definitely a health issue, and that's the way it needs to be treated. So what we need to ensure, if we're going to go down the decriminalisation path, is ensuring that we have health systems in place available 24/7 to deal with these people when they want help. Now, again, there's a lot of research being done overseas in relation to decriminalisation. It's not going to change some things. Some things will stay the same. But we are worried about things like drug driving. That's one thing that really concerns us. You're decriminalising, but you're still making it illegal to drive under the influence of drugs. We've got to be really careful with our messaging. We see a lot of drug driving in the Territory. But we're supportive of that harm minimisation, supporting people through addiction. People shouldn't be going to jail for small amounts of drugs. I support that. I'm interested to see what President Biden did recently in the US around cannabis. So certainly I think being progressive about this is really important. But it's about setting the limits. That's going to be the key thing, Genevieve.
Yeah, I'm really interested to sort of drill into your attitudes on this, because we've got on the one hand significant problems that you're seeing day to day on the streets. We've got some moves that would seem to counteract some of the issues that you're having. But if we don't get the community support measures in place that you're describing, it could be bedlam for police.
It's not. Well, it's going to be bedlam for the community. Let's not worry about white guys and girls.
That's right.
Let's worry about the community. The fact of the matter is, if we don't get those systems right, it's not going to work. And we'll fail. And we'll know real quick, because, we will see that through crime stats. We'll see that through the wastewater analysis that the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission do. So the proof will be there pretty quickly. It'll be in the annual reports and in the government services review, probably within 12 months of implementation. So need those support things in place.
On that matter of resources and what you've got to conjure with, we had a pretty tough summer last year with the protesters. Yeah. This is traditionally a very peaceful place. But look, these are politically and socially difficult times. Post-pandemic, there are a lot of economic issues. There are other things that bring focus to the national capital. And you described trying to play whack-a-mole with the protesters as they popped up all over the place. Have you got the resources to manage not only the tasks you've got in front of you for the ACT's population, but also the possibility that there's more disruptive protest and more problematic behaviour in the territories?
Oh, look, I think it's a given we're going to see more protests. I mean, the geopolitical environment in Europe and other areas is pretty tense, and I think that will manifest itself in protest activity here in Canberra. We're seeing that they're peaceful, so at this stage I don't think there's a problem. You know, I'm lucky that I can call upon the national resources of the AFP if necessary to supplement me. We've had some conversations with New South Wales Police as well in relation to getting some assistance from them if things get out of hand. We surged during the last lot of protests around Australia Day, so I'm confident we can get the resources if needed. The issue is sustainability.
Well, the cost too, surely.
The cost. Well, the costs, we're $3 million, I think, from that protest period we saw over the last summer. But the issue is also sustainability on my members and the fact that a lot of them didn't sign up to do protests every day of the week. So we've got to make sure we actually get that balance right and ensuring the workforce is well rested, well resourced and well trained.
What's the community's role if we're looking towards the next decade? Where do we need to step up as a whole community to support policing?
Well, I think we're changing our model of policing. We're moving more to an intelligence-led. I think the philosophy of what I want to see us police the community is become more guardians. So more guardians of the community, working with the community to ensure that we actually protect them. We're part of the community. I think some people sometimes forget that. We go to schools, we go to play sport, all those sort of things, go and have a beer at the pub. So, I don't want our police to be seen as warriors where all they're doing is actually, arresting people and giving people a hard time. And we did a really good job during COVID in relation to the way we police the territory. But what I want to see is the community sort of embrace us as an organisation and work with us to keep themselves safe. That's the sort of philosophy we're doing. We're doing a lot of work in the schools now. We're getting back out in the community, and that's what we want to do over the next 8 years or so.
Yeah, so just finally, what about your police force? If the police force and the ACT collectively looks in the mirror, where does it need to evolve and change?
Oh, it needs to reflect the community. I mean, that's simple. I mean, you can't police a community unless you reflect the community. So, and it's community values as well as the appearance. I mean, we're getting pretty well with a split of females across the organisation, but, we need more people from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds. Aboriginally, we've got quite a few police officers now from First Nations, but again, we probably need more. We definitely need more people from Asian countries. And our recruitment over the next 12 to 18 months, Genevieve, you'll see, will focus on Canberra. We want to get people from Canberra policing Canberra.
Yeah, local people policing
100%.
Local issues. Deputy Commissioner Neil Gaughan, terrific to have you projecting your vision for Canberra over the next 8 to 10 years. Thank you so much for taking part in the conversation.
Thanks, Genevieve. Much appreciated.
I'm Genevieve Jacobs and this is Region Media.